Hello, good day everyone. My name is Ivan Ricardo Buton, taking up the Bachelor of Secondary Education major in Mathematics. Today, I am going to tackle about self-assessment. So, let's start. What is self-assessment? A self-assessment is an individual review performed to identify elements that can be improved or exploited to achieve certain predefined goals. In other words, the person analyzes himself to improve his perspective about his capabilities and potential. In social psychology, self-assessment is the process of looking at oneself in order to assess aspects that are important to one's identity. It is one of the motives that drives self-evaluation along with self-verification and self-enhancement. Self-assessment is where you can find what kind of personality do you have. Why is it important? Self-assessment can provide insight into students' true comprehension and can help to identify gaps in students' knowledge. Encouraging students to examine their own learning and levels of understanding can also be an important wake-up call, identifying areas that require improvement. Student self-assessment occurs when learners assess their own performance and is primarily used to help students develop specific learning skills that they will need for professional competence. This process may assist in making students more aware of and more responsible for their own learning process. So, napakahalaga nito para malaman mo kung ano ang iyong dapat i-improve, kung ano ang iyong strength and weaknesses. Malalaman mo kung saan ka nagkukulang at para alam mong i-improve ito. What is the purpose of self-assessment? The purpose of self-assessment is to help the individual know the extent of his abilities and to improve upon them without the need of a performance appraiser. It involves the use of questions such as, what are my strengths, what are the obstacles, etc. It is a way to learn about yourself by gathering data that includes information about your work-related values, interests, personality, type, and aptitudes. Your goal will be to find occupations that are suitable based on the result. So, ikaw na mismo ang mag-aayos sa sarili mo sa pag-a-assess. Dahil sa pag-a-assess sa sarili mo, ikaw mismo ang makakapag-ayos. So, I have here some personal dimensions and try to do it yourself. Just put a check mark sa tapat. What is the purpose of self-assessment? The purpose of self-assessment is to help the individual know the extent of his abilities and to improve upon them without the need of a performance appraiser. It involves the use of questions such as, what are my strengths, what are the obstacles, etc. It is a way to learn about yourself by gathering data that includes information about your work-related values, interests, personality type, and aptitudes. Your goal will be to find occupations that are suitable based on the result. So, self-assessment is to help yourself to know your abilities and what you need to improve. So, try to do it yourself. I have here some personal dimensions that I will mention later. And the choices are, in who am I, self-estimate your characteristics features. Just put a check mark beside the letter A, B, C, or D. Okay, let's start. Under intellectual, letter A, brilliant, creative, a thinker, highly informed. Letter B, bright, studious, school-minded, well-informed. C, average, conscientious, adequately informed. Letter D, below average, indifferent, easygoing, hardly informed. Under leadership, letter A, high achiever, outgoing, a very active leader. Letter B, above average achiever, independent, moderately active leader. Letter C, average achiever, conventional, active follower. Letter D, below average achiever, conforming, indifferent follower. Next, conscience. A, strongly law abiding, strongly disturbed with misdeeds committed, strictly conventional. Letter B, somewhat law abiding, somewhat disturbed by misdeeds committed, somewhat conventional. Letter C, may disobey rules or law as long as no one else sees, not disturbed by misdeeds indifferent to convention. Letter D, delights in misdeeds that flaunt rules and law, does not care about convention. Next, achievement. Letter A, performing outstandingly in school, recipient of awards and honors. Letter B, performing well in school, better than most students. Letter C, performing satisfactorily, as good as half of the class. Letter D, performing barely satisfactorily, among the poorest in the class. Under physical, letter A, very physically active, athletic, energetic. Letter B, somewhat physically active, takes to athletics regularly. Letter C, physically inactive, shuns athletic, too weak to do physical exercise. Letter D, hardly physically active, joins athletic only when required, lacking in energy. Next, aesthetic. A, highly artistic, connoisseur of art, avid consumer of artistic commodity like record tapes, art exhibits, plays, concerts, etc. Letter B, somewhat appreciative of art, has some artistic talent, regular consumer of artistic commodity. Letter C, likes certain forms of art, attends artistic performances if there is time. Letter D, don't care about art, don't understand art. Under emotional warmth. Letter A, very lively, cheerful, very enthusiastic, fun to be with. Letter B, somewhat lively, pleasant, somewhat enthusiastic, relaxing to be with. Letter C, hardly lively, occasionally pleasant, with little enthusiasm, quiescent. Letter D, grouchy, irritable, unenthusiastic, unexcitable, tense. Under personal relations. Letter A, very accommodating, empathetic, adaptable, affiliates with others. Letter B, somewhat accommodating, considerate, cooperative. Letter C, hardly accommodating, somewhat self-directed. Letter D, standoffish, hostile, insensitive to others, wishing harm down to others. Next, work. Letter A, very enduring, responsible, enterprising, persevering, playful. Letter B, somewhat enduring, prepares to execute ready-made plans, accepts but does not seek responsibility. C, hardly enduring, short-lived effort, seldom makes plans, if possible, accepts no responsibility. Letter D, unenduring, does not work up to completion of tasks, irresponsible, adverse to planning. Under communicating, letter A, eloquent, forceful, assertive, persuasive, effect, effective in communication. Letter B, somewhat, somewhat eloquent, somewhat assertive, somewhat effective. Letter C, hardly skillful and effective in communication. Letter D, faltering, awkward, and effective in communication. Under religious, letter A, very religious, give much time to church work, contemplative, very benevolent. Letter B, somewhat religious, give some time to church work, somewhat benevolent. Letter C, hardly religious, seldom engages in church work, hardly perform benevolent acts. Letter D, irreligious, does not perform church work, performs no benevolent acts of work. Next, outlook on life. Letter A, very ambitious, very highly aspiring, very optimistic, and hopeful of the future. Letter B, somewhat ambitious, somewhat highly aspiring, quite hopeful of the future. Letter C, hardly ambitious, uncertain about life goals and vague as the future. D, lacking in ambition, makes no projection about the future, lives by the day. Self-worth. A, very loving and worthy of love, indispensable peer in attachment of goals, most highly regarded by family, recognized as leader and civic social worker. Letter B, somewhat loving and lovable, seen by peers as cooperative, appreciated by community for civic or social work. Letter C, hardly loving and lovable, seen by peers as passive follower, unnoticeable in civic or social work. Letter D, unloving and unlovable, seen by peers as obstructive of group goals, uncivic-minded. So these are the different personal dimensions. How to score self-assessment? If you if you put a check on letter A is equivalent to 10, and the personal dimensions total of 13. So 13 multiplied by 10 is equal to 130 points. And B is equivalent to 8 is equals to 104 points. C is equivalent to 6 is equal to 78 points. D is equivalent to 4 is equals to 52 points. Now this is the table for score points. If you got 110 to 130, your personality dimensions is excellent. Your grade is 90%. If your score is 89 to 109, your personality dimensions is above average with a grade of 85%. If your score points is 68 to 88, your personality dimensions is average, grade 80%. Score points. If your score is 47 to 67, your personality dimensions is below average with a grade of 75%. And last, if your points is 26 to 46, your personality dimensions is poor with a grade of 60%. To evaluate self-estimated personality dimensions, a score between 110 to 130 points means you have known much about yourself to be excellent. You got a weighted grade of 90%. A score between 89 to 109 points is above average with a grade of 85%. 68 to 88 points is average with a grade of 75%. A score between 47 to 67, I'm sorry for the typo, points is below average, and a score of 26 to 46 points is poor with a 60% grade. If you got a poor personality dimensions, after knowing who you are, you don't need to worry. I'm sorry again for the typo. Instead, you must challenge yourself in improving your personality dimensions by applying the 5 steps of self-management sequence. This will help you in controlling your success and failure in life. So that's all. Thank you.